Hey, boys and girls. So, remember yesterday when we were reading, Bob was telling us about the dog who had an owner who missed his owner, and he stayed there waiting for his owner, and they made a statue of the dog. Which, if we would have read that story, I think we would have been like, oh, that's so sweet or heartbreaking. But Bob's like, there's nothing good about that. One thing I wanted to remind you about is to work on your reading strategy of mental models, mental images. So make sure as I'm reading the story, you're in a comfy place and you're picturing the story in your head, because you want to make a movie in your head of what's happening in the story as I read it. So here we go. In my opinion, that dog was a ninny, a numbskull, a nincompoop. Let me tell you about being man's best friend. Being man's best friend can mean a lot of things. Companionship, belly rubs, tennis balls, but it can also mean a dark, endless highway and an open truck window. It can mean the smell of the wet wind is hot as hands grab the box you're in with your brothers and sisters and you go sailing into the unkind night, and still, crazy as it sounds, you're thinking, but I'm yours. That's what being man's best friend can get you. A black highway, an empty box, and no one in the world but you. So let's see what he means about a black highway. If some of you read Ivan with me, you know what he's talking about. The early days. I don't remember much about my early puppy days. It was 3 years ago, but sometimes it feels like 300. Mostly, I recall fighting with my sibs for the Primo Mill spot. Lots of squirming and squeaking, everything soft and milk-smelling and movable, like we were one great big complicated animal. I never met my dad, and my mom didn't say much about him, except that he was trouble. Mom had a beautiful fawn coat, Chihuahua, some this, some that, nice messy bloodline. Mutts rule. So if you don't know, a mutt is a type, what describes a dog that has many different breeds of dog in him. So maybe he's Chihuahua, maybe Poodle, maybe Maltese. He has different breeds in him. He's a mutt, okay? Mom crooned to us, told us stories, laid down the law. I wonder if she knew she didn't have much time to prepare us for the world. We were born in a dark place. Probably under some porch stairs, I suspect, since I remember the sound of boots plodding up and down, the biting and ugly smell of human feet. They called my mom Rio, and they fed her most days, though sometimes she actually had to fend for herself. She never showed fear toward them, or respect. Indifference, I guess you'd say. Unless they tried to handle one of us, she growled, then hopping to make it clear that we were hers and hers alone. I myself got picked up a couple times. The hands reached in, grabbed. They were rough and smelled of strange scents, bitter and meaty. My mom's growl made me fearless, and I wriggled and I yiped. The hands shoved me back to the warm place where I could sleep and drink and dream in safety. Still, I understood in my simple puppy way that dogs belonged to humans, and that's how it would always be. So boys and girls, when he's saying the hands grabbed us, he's talking about humans. Humans were picking them up. Boss. My mom wasn't much for names. She'd had a lot of litters. I guess she'd run out of ideas. So when she had a lot of litters, that means she had a lot of puppies. And usually dogs have maybe 2, 3, 5, many puppies at a time. So his mom had baby puppies a lot. My brother first was Natch, the firstborn. Runt, my youngest brother, was the last. Dot had a little spot on her back, and Yip was always complaining. I was Rowdy. Goes without saying, and that left my oldest sister. We all called her Boss. Boss was small but mean, with a distinctive sharp-sounding bark. She could outmaneuver any of us to the best spot for dining. I admired her grit, even if she did get on my nerves. When we got a bit older, less blind, more cocky, I fought her off occasionally, but mostly Boss won. She was fearless, that pup. Alone. The truck happened without warning one night. They threw us in a box. They left my mom behind. I can still hear her frantic howls. I landed in a muddy ditch. It was a cloudy night, nearly freezing. Even the moon had abandoned me. And the smells! Everything so wild and unknown. Animals with big jaws and bigger appetites. Birds that swooped in to kill. Death and life all mixed up together. I searched for my siblings until the truth became clear. I was utterly alone. So he went from being with his siblings and fighting with Boss to get the good spot to eat, to they put them all in a box, and now he landed up on the side of the highway and he was completely left alone. So I don't know if someone dropped him off there or they fell out of the truck, but now he's all alone. Cars. The next morning, I began my slow journey, moving through the tall, wet grass, my limbs stiff from the cold. Now and then, I drink from a mud puddle or gnaw on some grass. By evening, I was wobbly with hunger and thirst. I followed the highway. Every time a four-wheeled creature roared by, I froze in fear. And yet, and this is what slays me, I knew that cars meant humans, and humans meant the possibility of living, just as much as they meant the possibility of dying. So he's afraid of the humans. He doesn't know if a car sees him, if it's going to be a good human or one that doesn't take care of him. But he's also alone and a baby, and he's also afraid of the animals that he's seeing because they too can eat him. The owl. Darkness had fallen when it came out of nowhere. The owl. A shadow in a shadow. They don't make a sound, not a sound. It's quite impressive when you think about it. Just as their talons, those marvelous weapons, raked my fur, I caught my right front foot in a small hole and I stumbled. If she'd gotten hold of my body, I wouldn't be here. But all she managed to do was grab my tail. Only time in my life I've regretted my handsome hindquarters. I was airborne, hanging upside down, dizzy and dazed, and just crazy enough to think, hey, I'm actually flying! Before the terror hit full force, I caught a whiff of other animals below. Later I found out they were pocket gophers, but back then I just knew I was smelling something completely foreign. The owl must have decided the gophers would make a more satisfying meal. She let loose her grip and I plummeted to the earth. So Bob was about to be owl food, but the owl saw gophers, let Bob go. More luck. Maybe it was my puppy fat or my soft bones or my incredible good fortune. But I didn't die. I didn't even break anything. I'd flown twice in my short life, and I lived to tell the tale. I found a small hollow at the base of a fallen tree, poked my nose in and got a swat, and a hiss from a grouchy raccoon. Kept going, waddling, whimpering. He's hurt. He's going, because, he had been dropped by the owl. Lights ahead. New strange smells. Kept going. It's amazing how much the sheer will not die. The sheer will to not die can keep you moving. So he didn't want to die. He was determined to be fine. Exit 8. I finally came to a small road curving off the main highway. Exit 8 turned out to be. A big billboard overhead had a picture of a terrifying animal on it. Of course, I didn't know what a billboard was. Didn't know that the scary animal was a gorilla, let alone that he would become my dearest friend. But something told me to follow the off-ramp. And eventually I ended up at the Exit 8 Big Top Mall and Video Arcade, home of the one and only Ivan. History. I made it to the mall. So the mall that he got to, so he's walking down the highway because the truck had dropped him off. He sees an exit and it says that there's a mall and he sees an animal. So he gets to the mall. I made it to the mall. Slept in dirty hay by some garbage bins. The next night, I found that hole in Ivan's cage, stole his banana, slept on his belly, and the rest, as they say it, is history. For 2 years, I lived at that seedy old place that was part mall, part circus, and all crummy. But that was nothing compared to Ivan. He spent 27 lousy years there. And our dear friend Stella, an old circus elephant, was stuck there for most of her life too. When Stella passed away, it nearly broke Ivan's heart. I tried like crazy to get him through those dark days, but what really saved him, I think, was Ruby, our baby elephant friend. Before Stella died, Ivan promised her he'd get Ruby out of that awful place. And to my amazement, he actually pulled it off. Ivan and Ruby and a bunch of our other pals ended up going to different places, zoos and sanctuaries that knew how to take care of them. They're with others of their own kind, and they're loved and well cared for. It's been over a year now since we all moved, and they seem so much happier. Me? I lucked out. My girl Julia, whose dad had worked at the mall, decided her family needed a dog. Who was I to argue? 2 square meals, my own bed, all the belly rubs I could beg for. What dog in his right mind would not say yes to that? The best part is, we don't live far from Ivan and Ruby. I get to see them all the time. I'm glad they're nearby, and I'm thrilled they've settled in so well. Really, it's a solid situation. It's a solid solution, but it's not a perfect one. Okay, so it sounds like we're going to start to hear what's happening now. Boys and girls, a reading strategy that you could use is to get a notebook right now, keep the same notebook running as we read the story, and draw a picture of what happened today, and then just kind of think of, what do you think problems may be happening with the characters that we're going to meet? Okay, have a good day, everybody.